I shuddered as Evelyn's words echoed through the pristine walls of my supposed new home. In this house, you'll learn to know your place. You're not family. You're just an outsider. My heart sank, but I forced a polite smile. Thank you for having me, I replied, clinging to Jack's arm as he squeezed my hand reassuringly. Evelyn's cold gaze swept over me with contempt before she turned away, barking orders about unpacking. As Jack helped carry our luggage upstairs, a sense of dread crept over me. Later that morning, I found myself alone in the vast kitchen, scrubbing every surface until my hands were raw. Remember, you have the cleaning to finish up before lunch. Evelyn's shrill voice rang out, and I flinched. Yes, Evelyn, I murmured, my shoulders slumping. This was not the warm welcome I'd envisioned. It was a stark contrast from just a year ago when Jack had proposed, his eyes shining with love. I never thought I'd find someone like you, Sophie. Will you marry me? Tears of joy had filled my eyes as I breathlessly accepted, unable to imagine a life without him. We were supposed to start our happily ever after together, but fate had other plans. Jack's job transfer meant moving to his hometown, and Evelyn had insisted we stay with them until we found our own place. At the time, her offer seemed genuine. I'm so glad you're here, Sophie. We're like family already. She had gushed, embracing me warmly. David, Jack's father, had echoed the sentiment. Welcome to your new home. Foolishly, I had believed their welcoming facade, comforted by the idea of having family nearby. But within days of our arrival, the truth unraveled. You call this clean, do it again, and do it right, Evelyn had sneered, scrutinizing my efforts. When I tried to explain, she cut me off with a glare that chilled me to the bone. As the weeks passed, the abuse escalated, and I found myself drowning in a sea of impossible demands and endless chores. Desperate, I confided in my godmother, Rachel. Aunt Rachel, I don't know what to do anymore. I had sobbed into the phone, my voice trembling. Her firm tone offered solace. Come to me, dear. You don't have to go through this alone. With Rachel's guidance, I began documenting the mistreatment, determined to break free from this nightmare. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. As I lay awake that night, my mind drifted back to happier times before this living hell began. Jack and I had met at a mutual friend's party, and from the moment our eyes locked, I knew he was special. We spent countless nights talking, sharing our dreams and aspirations over cheap wine and greasy pizza. Jack made me feel alive in a way I'd never experienced before. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, he had whispered one evening as we strolled hand in hand through the park. My heart raced, and I could barely form the words. I want that too. A few months later, Jack proposed in that same park, getting down on one knee as the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. I never thought I'd find someone like you, Sophie. Will you marry me? Tears of joy streamed down my face as I nodded fervently. Yes! I can't imagine my life without you. We were polar opposites in many ways, but our love transcended any differences. While I was a free-spirited artist, Jack was a driven businessman. Yet we complemented each other perfectly. Little did I know that our blissful union would be shattered by the very people who should have welcomed me with open arms. After the wedding, Jack's company offered him a prestigious promotion, but it required relocating to his hometown. Reluctantly, we agreed, naively believing Evelyn and David's promises of support. We're so excited to have you both here, Evelyn had gushed, pulling me into a suffocating embrace. You're family now. David had nodded enthusiastically, patting Jack on the back. Our little boy is finally settling down. In those early days, Evelyn doted on me, offering to help with meal planning and household chores, but it didn't take long for the mask to slip. This isn't how I do laundry, she'd snap, rewashing entire loads despite my protests. Gradually, her demands escalated, and any attempt to reason with her was met with a torrent of insults and criticism. Useless, just like your mother, she'd hiss, her eyes blazing with contempt. Jack tried to intervene, but Evelyn played the victim, accusing me of disrespecting her in her own home. Slowly, she drove a wedge between us, exploiting Jack's blind devotion to her. Trapped in a cycle of abuse, I began to lose myself, my once vibrant spirit dimming with every cruel remark and impossible task. But Aunt Rachel's phone call reignited the spark within me, reminding me of my strength and worth. With her guidance, I started documenting every incident, compiling a dossier of evidence against my tormentor. Evelyn had no idea the gathering storm brewing, oblivious to the tsunami of karma barreling towards her. With Aunt Rachel's support, I felt a renewed sense of determination. She had promised to gather evidence against Evelyn and her shady business practices, but first, I needed to play along and keep up appearances. "You look radiant today, Evelyn," I said with a forced smile as she strutted into the kitchen one morning. She paused, eyeing me suspiciously, before a sickly sweet grin spread across her face. "Why, thank you, dear. I'm so glad you're finally learning." I suppressed a shudder, focusing on the pancake batter I was mixing. Evelyn sidled up beside me, running a perfectly manicured nail along the counter. "You know, Sophie, I had my doubts about you at first," she began, her tone dripping with condescension. "But you're shaping up to be a decent daughter-in-law." My grip tightened on the whisk as she continued. "Of course, you'll never truly be part of this family, but at least you're trying." I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up a perfectly manicured hand. "Ah, ah, ah! Don't ruin the moment with your incessant chattering." Swallowing hard, I nodded and returned to my task, grateful when she finally sauntered away. Later that day, as I was scrubbing the floors, Evelyn cornered me again. "You missed a spot," she sneered, pointing to an immaculate tile. "Honestly, Sophie, it's like you're not even trying." Before I could protest, she grabbed the bucket of soapy water and upended it over my head. I gasped, sputtering, as the foul-smelling liquid drenched me from head to toe. "Oops, clumsy me," Evelyn laughed, her eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Now you'll have to start all over again." As she sauntered away, I fought back tears, my hands trembling with rage. How dare she treat me this way? I was her family, her daughter-in-law, not some servant to be abused and humiliated. But I knew better than to retaliate. Not yet, at least. Instead, I meticulously documented every incident, compiling a mountain of evidence against the woman who had made my life a living hell. In the evenings, Jack would return from work, oblivious to the daily torture I endured. Evelyn was an expert at putting on her saccharine mask, playing the doting mother and gracious hostess. "How was your day, darling?" she'd coo, kissing Jack's cheek as he entered the kitchen. He'd smile tiredly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Exhausting, but it's all worth it to provide for my family." My heart would clench at his words, knowing that in Evelyn's twisted mind I was nothing more than an outsider, a burden to be tolerated. Still, I clung to the hope that one day Jack would see the truth, the monster lurking beneath his mother's carefully crafted facade. With Aunt Rachel's help, I knew that day would come sooner than Evelyn could ever imagine. The days blurred together in a haze of endless chores and verbal abuse. No matter how hard I tried, Evelyn always found fault with my efforts. "This kitchen is a disgrace," she spat one morning, surveying the immaculate countertops with disdain. "I could eat off these floors, and they'd be cleaner." I bit my tongue, refusing to rise to her bait. Evelyn prowled closer, her perfectly coiffed hair swaying with each step. "Well," she snapped, her eyes narrowing, "don't you have anything to say for yourself?" Stealing my resolve, I met her gaze evenly. "I've cleaned everything as instructed, Evelyn." Her lips curled into a sneer. "You call this clean? Do it again, and do it right." As she turned on her heel and stormed out, I felt the familiar sting of tears pricking my eyes. No matter how meticulously I worked, it was never enough for her. Later that afternoon, Evelyn caught me folding laundry in the living room. "Those creases are atrocious," she tutted, snatching a freshly pressed shirt from my hands. Before I could protest, she grabbed the iron from the board and pressed the scorching metal directly onto the fabric. The acrid stench of burning cotton filled the air as the shirt disintegrated beneath the searing heat. "There?" Evelyn smirked, tossing the ruined garment aside. "No more creases." I stared at the charred remains, my hands trembling with rage and disbelief. How could someone be so cruel, so utterly devoid of compassion? As the weeks dragged on, Evelyn's torment escalated to new heights. She would berate me for hours, finding fault with every aspect of my existence. No task was ever completed to her satisfaction, no effort deemed worthy. "Useless, just like your whore of a mother," she'd hiss, her words cutting deeper than any knife. I longed to scream, to fight back against her relentless onslaught. But I knew any retaliation would only give her more ammunition, more reason to turn Jack against me. So I endured, clinging to the hope that Aunt Rachel's plan would succeed. I documented every vile act ever inflicted upon me, building an ironclad case against the woman who had made my life a waking nightmare. Meanwhile, Evelyn played the part of the devoted matriarch to perfection whenever Jack was around. Her saccharine smile and sickly sweet words were a stark contrast to the venom she spewed the moment his back was turned. "How's my favorite daughter-in-law?" She'd simper, pulling me into a suffocating embrace as Jack entered the room. I'd force a tight-lipped smile, my muscles aching from the strain of maintaining the charade. "Just wonderful, Evelyn. You're too kind." Jack would beam, oblivious to the dark truth lurking beneath the surface. In those moments, I hated him for his blind devotion, his unwavering trust in the monster wearing his mother's skin. But deep down, I knew the fault wasn't his. Evelyn had spent years cultivating her carefully crafted facade, lulling everyone into a false sense of security before revealing her true, twisted nature. I vowed to be the one to tear that facade down, to expose her for the vile, manipulative creature she truly was. With each passing day, my resolve hardened, fueled by the knowledge that justice would soon be served. Evelyn had no idea the storm brewing on the horizon, the tsunami of karma barreling towards her with unstoppable force. Her reign of terror was nearing its end, and I would be the one to deliver the final, devastating blow. As the weeks crawled by, Evelyn's torment showed no signs of relenting. If anything, her cruelty only intensified, fueled by some twisted desire to break me completely. One evening, as I was clearing the dinner dishes, a sudden crash made me jump. I whirled around to find Evelyn standing over a shattered vase, her face contorted with rage. "You stupid, clumsy girl!" she screeched, advancing towards me with balled fists. "Look what you've done!" "I didn't," I stammered, backing away instinctively. Before I could finish, her hand lashed out, striking me across the face with stinging force. I gasped, my cheek burning as tears welled in my eyes. "Don't you dare talk back to me," Evelyn snarled, looming over me like a predator cornering its prey. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I was done being her punching bag, her verbal and physical target. Trembling with equal parts fear and fury, I reached for my phone and dialed the one person I knew I could trust. "Aunt Rachel, I don't know what to do anymore," I choked out between sobs, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a brief pause, then her familiar tone, firm and reassuring. "Come to me, dear. You don't have to go through this alone." Relief washed over me, tempering the rising panic. Aunt Rachel had always been my rock, my guiding light through life's darkest storms. If anyone could help me escape this nightmare, it was her. Evelyn must have sensed the shift in my demeanor, for her eyes narrowed dangerously. "Who are you talking to?" she demanded, snatching the phone from my hand. I flinched, bracing for another blow, but she simply sneered and tossed the phone aside. "No one can save you from me, Sophie. You're mine now, to do with as I please." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to show fear. Not anymore. With Aunt Rachel's help, I would find a way to break free from Evelyn's clutches once and for all. Over the next few days, we formulated a plan. Rachel would use her connections to investigate Evelyn's shady business dealings, gathering evidence of her misdeeds. Meanwhile, I would continue documenting the abuse, building an airtight case against my tormentor. "We'll bring that monster down, Sophie," Rachel vowed, her voice steely with determination. "She'll pay for what she's done to you, I promise." I nodded, my resolve strengthened by her unwavering support. No longer did I feel alone, trapped in a cycle of helplessness and despair. For the first time in months, I dared to hope for a future free from Evelyn's toxic grip. Of course, maintaining the charade around her and Jack grew increasingly difficult. Evelyn seemed to sense my newfound defiance, her taunts and mind games escalating in response. "What's wrong, dear? You look positively miserable," she'd purr, her sickly sweet tone dripping with false concern. I'd force a tight smile, biting back the torrent of rage simmering just beneath the surface. "I'm fine, Evelyn, just tired." Her perfectly manicured nails would trail along my arm, sending involuntary shivers down my spine. "Well, we can't have that, can we? Perhaps you need a little motivation to perk you up." The implied threat was clear, but I refused to cower any longer. Soon, very soon, the tables would turn, and Evelyn would finally get the comeuppance she so richly deserved. Just as Aunt Rachel and I were putting the final pieces of our plan into motion, a bombshell rocked the Benson household. Jack called an urgent family meeting one evening, his face etched with worry. "I have some difficult news," he began, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Our biggest client just pulled out of their contract. They're taking their business elsewhere." David slammed his fist on the table, his eyes wide with panic. "What? That account is half our revenue. How could this happen?" As the two men debated the dire financial implications, Evelyn sat in stony silence, her perfectly painted mask slipping ever so slightly. When she finally spoke, her voice was laced with quiet fury. "It can't be. It must be Sophie's doing." I recoiled as if struck, incredulous at her outrageous accusation. "What are you talking about? I had nothing to do with this." But Evelyn was beyond reason, her eyes blazing with barely contained rage. "Don't play dumb with me, you scheming little witch. You've been plotting against us all along, haven't you?" Jack tried to intervene, ever the peacekeeper. "Mom, that's enough. Sophie wouldn't she?" Evelyn cut him off, rounding on me with bared teeth. "Think about it, Jack. Ever since she wormed her way into our lives, things have gone downhill. This is just the latest in her twisted games." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but she pressed on relentlessly. "She's a cancer, poisoning everything she touches. We have to cut her out before she destroys us completely." David looked shell-shocked, torn between siding with his wife or his only son. Jack, bless his heart, tried valiantly to calm the situation. "Mom, you're not thinking straight. Sophie loves me. She would never intentionally hurt this family." His words only seemed to enrage Evelyn further. With a feral snarl, she lunged towards me, her perfectly manicured nails aimed straight for my eyes. I barely had time to flinch before Jack intervened, restraining his mother with surprising strength. "Enough!" he roared, his usually gentle demeanor replaced by righteous fury. "I won't let you treat my wife this way. Not anymore." For a brief, shining moment, I dared to hope that the blinders had finally fallen from Jack's eyes, that he would see Evelyn for the vile, manipulative creature she truly was. But old habits die hard, and Evelyn was a master of deception. Her expression shifted in an instant, crumpling into one of hurt disbelief as fat crocodile tears spilled down her cheeks. "My own son," she sobbed, pressing a trembling hand to her chest, "defending that snake over his own mother's well-being." Jack faltered, his resolve visibly wavering as the guilt trip took hold. Evelyn seized the opportunity, clinging to him with a desperate, almost feral intensity. "Think about what you're doing, Jackie. Think about your father and me, the people who raised you and loved you unconditionally. Are you really going to throw all that away for her?" And just like that, the spell was recast. I could see the conflicted emotions warring across Jack's face as he instinctively pulled away from my outstretched hand. I need some air," he muttered, stumbling from the room in a daze. As the door slammed behind him, Evelyn turned to face me once more, her expression triumphant and devoid of even an ounce of remorse. "You see what you've done, you wretched girl?" she hissed, advancing on me like a snake poised to strike. "You've turned my own flesh and blood against me. But mark my words, this war is far from over." Her words chilled me to the bone, but I refused to be cowed. Not anymore. Thanks to Aunt Rachel's diligent efforts, the evidence against Evelyn was mounting by the day. Soon she would face the ultimate reckoning, the consequences of her cruelty laid bare for all to see. The game was nearing its end, and this time I would be the victor. In the aftermath of Evelyn's explosive outburst, a tense silence descended over the household. Jack avoided me like the plague, haunted by the seeds of doubt his mother had so expertly planted. Evelyn, for her part, reveled in the discord she had sown. Whenever we crossed paths, she would grace me with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Trouble in paradise, dear," she'd simper, trailing a perfectly manicured nail along my cheek. I'd stiffen, biting back the torrent of rage threatening to spill forth. "Not at all, Evelyn. Jack and I are fine." Her laughter was like nails on a chalkboard. "If you say so, Sophie, but we both know the truth, don't we?" The words hung heavy in the air, an unspoken challenge that set my teeth on edge. In the meantime, Aunt Rachel's investigation was bearing fruit. She had uncovered a staggering paper trail of Evelyn's shady dealings, embezzlement, bribery, you name it. The evidence is damning, Sophie, Rachel murmured during one of our clandestine meetings. This should be more than enough to take that monster down for good. Relief washed over me at her words, tempering the growing sense of dread gnawing at my core. Soon, this nightmare would be over. I could finally break free of Evelyn's toxic grasp and start anew with Jack, far away from her poisonous influence. At least, that was the plan, until Evelyn went nuclear. It happened one evening at the dinner table. Jack had been brooding in silence throughout the meal, his brow furrowed with unspoken turmoil. Evelyn, ever the instigator, decided to poke the hornet's nest. "You've been awfully quiet lately, dear," she crooned, spearing a forkful of salad with deliberate precision. "Cat got your tongue?" Jack tensed, his knuckles whitening as he gripped his utensils. "Just leave it, Mom." But Evelyn was relentless, her voice taking on a sickly sweet edge. "Or perhaps you're still stewing over that little episode the other night? You know, when your darling wife tried to destroy this family?" The words hung in the air like a lead weight, and something inside me snapped. I could no longer remain silent in the face of her blatant lies and manipulation. "I spoke to Aunt Rachel," I blurted out, ignoring Jack's startled look, "and she spoke to your biggest client." This whole situation was inevitable. Evelyn's perfectly sculpted mask faltered, her eyes widening in shock and disbelief. "What did you say?" Emboldened, I pressed on recklessly. "Your company has been mismanaged for years, Evelyn. All Aunt Rachel did was point out the problems to your client, problems you conveniently chose to ignore." The air crackled with tension as Evelyn processed my words. Then, like a snake striking, she exploded in a burst of feral rage. "How dare you?" she screeched, launching herself across the table with talons outstretched. "You're ruining everything." Plates and glasses shattered around us as Jack tried in vain to restrain his mother's frenzied assault. David looked on in stunned silence, utterly paralyzed by the unfolding chaos. In that moment, everything crystallized for Jack. As he met my gaze, terror and heartbreak warring in his eyes, I knew the scales had finally fallen away. His mother's true nature, her vicious cruelty and boundless greed, was laid bare before him, a hideous truth he could no longer ignore. The blinders were off, and the facade had finally crumbled to dust. Evelyn Benson, matriarch and master manipulator, had been exposed, and she had no one to blame but herself. The aftermath of Evelyn's meltdown was nothing short of cataclysmic. As the dust settled and the shattered remnants of our once pristine dining room came into focus, an eerie silence descended. Jack was the first to break it, his voice thick with a potent mix of anguish and barely restrained fury. "Mom, what have you done?" Evelyn, always the master of deflection, immediately shifted into victim mode. "Me?" she wailed, clutching her carefully tousled hair. That snake is the one who's turned you against your own family." But her fragile guise was already crumbling, the cracks in her facade widening with each frantic excuse. David, for his part, seemed to be viewing his wife through new, painfully clear lenses. "Enough, Evelyn," he rumbled, his usually jovial demeanor replaced by a grim resolve I'd never witnessed before. "The jig is up. We know what you've done." Evelyn's perfectly painted mask slipped completely at his words, revealing the snarling beast lurking beneath. "You pathetic old fool," she spat, rounding on her husband with balled fists. "After everything I've sacrificed for this family, this is how you repay me?" A cruel laugh ripped from her throat as she whirled to face me once more. "And you conniving little bitch? You think you've won, don't you? That you can just waltz in and destroy everything I've built?" Jack stepped between us, shielding me from his mother's wrath. "Mom, you've done enough damage. Leave now before I call the police." His words seemed to douse Evelyn's fury in an instant, her expression shifting from outrage to disbelief. "Jackie, you can't mean that. I'm your mother." But Jack was immovable, his jaw set in a hard line as he steeled himself against her manipulations. "Not anymore. The woman I knew is gone, replaced by this monster." Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth, but the words kept pouring from him in an unstoppable torrent. "You've lied, cheated, and abused everyone around you for far too long. Well, no more. I want you out of this house and out of our lives for good." An anguished wail tore from Evelyn's throat as the reality of her situation finally sank in. "No. Please, Jackie, I'll do anything. Just don't." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Jack simply shook his head, his expression a mask of grim determination. I gave you too many chances, Mom. This is the path you chose. As Evelyn dissolved into a pathetic heap of sobs and recriminations, David stepped forward, his face etched with a weariness I'd never seen before. You heard him, Evelyn, he said, his voice laced with defeat. Pack your things, we're done. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for the once formidable woman crumpled at our feet. Almost. But the memories of her cruelty, her vicious torment, were still too raw, the scars too fresh. As David ushered his wife from the room, Jack turned to me, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Sophie, I'm so sorry. For everything. I opened my mouth to respond, but he barreled on, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. You were right all along. I was blinded by her lies and manipulation. I should have protected you, stood up for you. Gently I took his hand, feeling the weight of his anguish in the trembling grip. It's okay, Jack. You couldn't have known. But he was already shaking his head, his expression haunted. No excuses. I failed you in the worst way possible. But I promise, from now on, things will be different. As I gazed into the eyes of the man I loved, I saw a renewed sense of purpose burning within their depths. The shackles of Evelyn's toxic influence had finally been shattered, and we were free to start anew. It would be a long road to healing, but we would walk it together, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. Evelyn's reign of terror was over, and in its wake, a new chapter was just beginning to unfold. The sunlight faded into a soft glow as the day's warmth lingered in our living room, a prelude to what I thought would be a joyous evening. Daniel had just stepped out to the garden with Alex, leaving me to catch a moment of solitude. But solitude was the last thing I'd find today. Jenna, Alex's fiancée, lingered behind, her presence like a shadow that chilled the air. I turned to follow Daniel and Alex, but Jenna's voice, icy and sharp, cut through the silence. Marianne, you might want to sit down for this. Confused, I faced her, noticing the lack of warmth in her eyes. Is everything okay, Jenna? She smiled, but it was devoid of any kindness. Oh, it's perfect. Just thought to let you know, you won't be needing to worry about what to wear to the wedding. I blinked, puzzled. What do you mean? You're not invited, Marianne. Her words were blunt, like a slap. You see, you're not really Alex's mother. It would be embarrassing to have you there. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Embarrassing? Jenna, I've been Alex's stepmother for nearly 2 decades. Her laugh was hollow. Stepmother, right? But not his real mother, just a reminder of his father's past. We wouldn't want to complicate things with your presence. I staggered back, her words wounding deeper than any physical blow. Jenna, Save it, Marianne. We've made our decision. This is for the best. With that, she turned, leaving me standing there, grappling with a mix of shock, hurt, and disbelief. Daniel's laughter floated in from the garden, a stark contrast to the tension inside. I stood there feeling a profound sense of isolation, as if the family I thought I had was nothing more than a mirage. Gathering my composure, I followed Jenna outside, the weight of her words anchoring me to the spot. Daniel and Alex were deep in conversation, their laughter a balm to the sting of rejection I felt. Everything okay, Marianne? Daniel asked, noting my silence. I forced a smile, not wanting to shatter the moment. Yes, just a lot on my mind. Jenna joined Alex's side, her earlier cruelty masked by a veneer of affection. I watched them, a family tableau I was no longer part of. The evening wore on, but the joy had evaporated, leaving a chill that no amount of laughter could dispel. Jenna's words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of my place, or lack thereof, in this family. As they left, Jenna's parting smile was a dagger, her final words a clear message. I was an outsider, unwelcome in the life I had helped to build. That night, as Daniel slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The hurt and humiliation churned within me, a storm that promised no easy resolution. Jenna had drawn a line, one that I couldn't cross, even if I wanted to. But as the night deepened, a resolve took root within me. Jenna may have thought she'd won, but I wasn't ready to accept defeat, not yet. There was a part of me, quiet but unyielding, that whispered of retribution, a voice that said this wasn't the end but a beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I, Marianne, once thought of as just a stepmother, was ready to fight for my place in the family. Jenna's disdain had opened a door to a path I never intended to walk, but now there was no turning back. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to envision a future where the wrongs were righted. Jenna had underestimated me, and that was her first mistake. I vowed it would be her last. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room, a stark contrast to the chill in my heart. As Daniel prepared for work, the normalcy of our routine felt like a farce. The revelation from the night before played on a loop in my mind, but I kept my turmoil hidden beneath a practiced smile. My journey with Daniel and Alex began on a canvas of uncertainty, painted with cautious strokes as we navigated the complexities of forming a new family. Daniel, with his gentle eyes and a heart bruised by betrayal, had won me over, not just with his love, but with his unwavering dedication to his son, Alex. Alex was just 8 when I entered their lives, old enough to understand the change, but too young to accept it without reservations. My love for him was immediate, yet I approached with the patience of an artist, knowing that some bonds take time to form. "I'm heading out, Marianne. Sure you're okay?" Daniel's voice pulled me back from my reverie. "Yes, just lost in thought." "Have a good day," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm within. After Daniel left, the silence of the house enveloped me. The walls, once filled with the laughter and warmth of a family, now seemed to echo with Jenna's harsh words. It was in this solitude that I sought refuge in my art studio, where canvases and paintbrushes awaited my touch. Art had always been my sanctuary, a place where my thoughts and emotions could dance freely across the canvas. Today, it offered not just escape, but reflection. Each stroke became a means of processing the pain, the rejection, and the determination to reclaim my place in Alex's life. As I painted, I thought about the first time I met Alex. He had regarded me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, his young mind trying to place me in the fragmented picture of his family. I remembered our first genuine moment of connection, over a shared love of art. It was through painting that Alex and I had slowly bridged the gap between us, a series of moments that had felt like victories in the silent battles of acceptance. But Jenna's words had cast a shadow over those memories, suggesting that no matter what I did, I would always be on the outside looking in. The thought was a bitter pill, leaving a lingering aftertaste of resentment and sorrow. The hours slipped by, my emotions spilling onto the canvas in a tumult of color and chaos. It was a reflection of my inner turmoil, a visual representation of the battle I was preparing to fight. As the day waned, I cleaned my brushes, my resolve hardening. Jenna had underestimated the bond I shared with Alex and Daniel. She saw me as a threat, an obstacle to be removed, but she didn't understand the depth of our connection. Dinner that evening was a quiet affair, Daniel sensing my mood but not pressing. The unspoken tension hung between us like a thick fog, our conversations skirting around the edges of the truth. Afterward, I found myself wandering to Alex's old room, now a guest room seldom used. Memories cluttered the space like the scattered toys and books of his childhood. It was here, among these echoes of the past, that my resolve crystallized. Jenna had ignited a fire within me, one that burned with the need for justice and recognition. I wouldn't let her cruelty define my place in this family or dictate the terms of my relationship with Alex. As I stood in the quiet of Alex's room, a plan began to form, a way to expose Jenna's true nature and protect the family I loved. It was a risky path, fraught with potential heartache, but the stakes were too high to back down. I closed the door behind me, the decision made. It was time to fight back, to reclaim the narrative Jenna sought to control. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready. The next move was mine, and I intended to make it count. As dawn broke, the house lay in a heavy silence, a prelude to the storm that was brewing. Today was the day I decided to confront Alex about Jenna's behavior and the disparaging housekeeper comment. My heart raced with a mixture of dread and determination. The thought of facing my stepson, whom I had raised with love and care, over such a painful issue was daunting but necessary. Daniel and I had agreed to speak with Alex together. Unity was our strength, and in this matter, we stood undivided. Daniel's support was my anchor, his calm demeanor a counterbalance to the tempest within me. "Are you sure about this?" Daniel asked, concern etching his features as we sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Alex to arrive. "Yes," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. "We need clarity. We can't let Jenna drive a wedge through our family." When Alex walked in, the tension was palpable. His usual easy demeanor was replaced by a cautious wariness. He sensed the seriousness of the situation, his gaze flickering between Daniel and me. "Alex, we need to talk about Jenna's comments the other day," Daniel began, his tone measured but firm. Alex stiffened, his defenses rising. "What about them?" "Her saying Marianne isn't welcome at the wedding, and calling her a housekeeper. It's hurtful and unacceptable," Daniel continued, the hurt clear in his voice. Alex's expression hardened. "Jenna has her reasons. She believes family should be at the wedding, and Marianne isn't blood." I caught my breath, the sting of his words sharper than I anticipated. "Alex, I may not be your biological mother, but I've loved and cared for you as my own. Does that mean nothing?" He avoided my gaze, a sign of his inner conflict. "It's not about that. Jenna's just traditional." "Traditional?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my tone. "Or is it her way of asserting control, of excluding me from our family?" Alex shifted uncomfortably, a crack in his facade appearing. "It's complicated. Jenna has strong opinions about family dynamics." "Strong opinions shouldn't justify cruelty or exclusion," Daniel interjected, his disappointment evident. "We're supposed to be a family, Alex. That includes Marianne." The conversation spiraled, with Alex defending Jenna's actions and us trying to make him see reason. But beneath his arguments, I sensed a deeper unease. Jenna's influence was strong, but it wasn't absolute. There were moments, fleeting and fragile, where Alex seemed to waver, his conviction faltering. As the confrontation reached its peak, with voices raised and emotions raw, a painful realization dawned on me. This wasn't just about Jenna's disdain or Alex's acceptance of it. It was a test of our family's resilience. Could our bonds withstand the strain, or would Jenna's malice tear us apart? In the end, Alex left, the chasm between us wider than ever. Daniel and I sat in the aftermath, the weight of the encounter heavy on our hearts. "We had to try," Daniel said, reaching for my hand. "For our family." I nodded, tears brimming in my eyes. "I know, but it feels like we're losing him." Daniel pulled me into his arms, offering comfort in the silence. "We won't give up on Alex. We'll find a way through this." As I leaned into Daniel's embrace, a mix of sorrow and resolve settled within me. Jenna had drawn the battle lines, but the war was far from over. I would fight for Alex, for our family, even if it meant facing my own heartache head-on. The confrontation had laid bare the fractures within our family, but it had also steeled my resolve. Jenna's manipulations had ignited a fire within me, a determination to protect my family at all costs. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but I was ready to stand my ground, to mend what had been broken, and to reclaim the son I had lost to Jenna's influence. The days that followed the confrontation with Alex were marked by a heavy silence in our home. The air was thick with unsaid words, the tension like a tightrope stretched to its limit. Daniel and I moved through our routines with a semblance of normalcy, but the undercurrent of worry was palpable. Alex hadn't reached out since our argument, and the distance felt like miles instead of the few blocks that separated our homes. I spent my days in my studio, the blank canvases mocking me with their emptiness. Where I once found solace in my art, I now found a void. The colors seemed less vibrant, the brushes heavier in my hand. My thoughts were consumed by Alex and Jenna, their rejection like a constant shadow darkening my creativity. One afternoon, as I stared at a half-finished painting, the phone rang, shattering the silence. My heart leapt, a part of me hoping it was Alex, calling to bridge the gap between us. But it was Daniel, his voice tight with strain. "Marianne, can you come to my office? We need to talk. It's about Alex." The urgency in his voice sent a chill down my spine. I agreed, the sense of foreboding growing with each step I took towards Daniel's office. When I arrived, Daniel was waiting, his expression grave. He ushered me inside, closing the door behind us with a sense of finality. "It's Jenna," he began, his voice heavy. "She's taken things too far." My heart sank. "What happened?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's been spreading rumors about you in our community, claiming you're trying to sabotage Alex's future for your own gain." The accusation was like a physical blow, leaving me breathless. "But that's absurd. Why would she do this?" "Control," Daniel replied, his eyes dark with anger. "She's trying to isolate Alex to make sure he's completely under her influence, and she's using you as the scapegoat." The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. Jenna wasn't just content with excluding me from their wedding. She wanted to erase me from Alex's life entirely. "What are we going to do?" I asked, the fight in me reigniting. I couldn't let Jenna's manipulations go unchallenged, not when our family was at stake. "We fight back," Daniel said, his determination mirroring my own. "We gather evidence of her lies and expose her for what she is." The plan was risky, fraught with potential fallout, but the alternative, standing by while Jenna tore our family apart, was unthinkable. We agreed to start by reaching out to friends and acquaintances to counter Jenna's narrative with the truth. As the days passed, we pieced together a clearer picture of Jenna's campaign against me. Her lies were insidious, designed to sow doubt and discord among those who knew us. But with each conversation, with each piece of evidence we gathered, the tide began to turn. People were hesitant at first, but as we shared our side of the story, their skepticism gave way to support. The work was exhausting, emotionally and physically, but it brought Daniel and me closer together. Our evenings were spent reviewing what we had learned, planning our next steps, and most importantly, reaffirming our commitment to each other and our family. Then, just as we were beginning to make progress, a bombshell dropped. Alex reached out asking to meet. It was the first communication we'd had since the confrontation, and my emotions were a whirlwind of hope and apprehension. As we sat across from Alex in our living room, the air thick with unspoken questions, I saw the conflict in his eyes. Jenna's influence was still there, but so was the son I knew and loved. "Mom, Dad," he began, his voice uncertain, "I think we need to talk." The use of mom was a lifeline, a glimmer of the Alex I remembered. As he spoke, outlining his doubts about Jenna and her actions, I felt a door opening, a chance to mend the fractures in our family. The fallout from Jenna's machinations was far from over, but this moment, this conversation, was a beginning. It was a chance to fight for our family, to pull Alex back from the brink, and to stand united against the storm Jenna had unleashed. The path ahead was uncertain, the challenges daunting, but with Alex reaching out, we had hope. And sometimes hope is the strongest weapon in the battle to reclaim what's been lost. The days leading up to Alex and Jenna's wedding were fraught with a tension that seemed to permeate every aspect of our lives. Despite Alex's tentative outreach and his expressed doubts about Jenna, he seemed trapped in the inertia of the wedding plans, unable to break free from Jenna's manipulative grasp. Daniel and I had prepared as best we could for what we knew would be a challenging day. Armed with the truth about Jenna's deceit, we hoped to expose her before it was too late, to save Alex from a mistake that could very well ruin his life. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within our hearts. We received a message from Alex, a simple plea for us to be there, despite Jenna's wishes. It was a sign that the tide might be turning, that Alex was beginning to see through Jenna's facade. We arrived at the venue with a sense of purpose, the evidence of Jenna's lies securely in our possession. The guests were milling about, a buzz of anticipation in the air. Jenna was nowhere to be seen, presumably preparing for her grand entrance. As we mingled among the guests, sharing polite conversation, I could feel the weight of the upcoming confrontation. It wasn't long before whispers began to circulate, fueled by Jenna's allies, painting me as the villain of the piece. But we had allies of our own, those who had seen through Jenna's charade and were willing to stand with us. We had planned to confront Jenna privately to avoid a public spectacle, but fate had other plans. Jenna made her entrance, radiant in her bridal gown, the picture of innocence. But the facade didn't last. As the ceremony was about to begin, Daniel stepped forward, the evidence of Jenna's lies in hand. The room fell into a stunned silence as Daniel spoke, his voice calm but carrying a weight that demanded attention. He exposed Jenna's manipulations, her attempts to drive a wedge between Alex and our family, and her cruel campaign of lies against me. Jenna's reaction was immediate and incendiary. She denied everything, her voice rising in anger as she accused us of trying to ruin her special day. But the evidence was irrefutable, and as the guests murmured among themselves, it was clear that Jenna's deceit was laid bare for all to see. Alex stood frozen, the conflict evident on his face. It was a moment of reckoning, a chance for him to finally see Jenna for who she truly was. The confrontation escalated, voices raised in accusation and defense until suddenly, Alex spoke. His voice cut through the chaos, a beacon of clarity in the tumult. "Enough!" he exclaimed. "I can't do this. I can't marry someone who would go to such lengths to hurt the people I love." The room fell silent, all eyes on Alex as he turned to face Jenna. "I was blind," he continued. "Blinded by love, or what I thought was love. I see now the pain you've caused, and I can't be a part of that." Jenna's face crumpled, her facade crumbling as she realized her schemes had backfired. The wedding was called off, the guests departing in a whirl of whispered speculations and shock. As the dust settled, Alex approached Daniel and me, his expression one of remorse and relief. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I see now what she was doing. Thank you for not giving up on me." The wedding fiasco was a turning point, a painful but necessary catharsis that cleared the way for healing. Jenna had shown her true colors, and in doing so had freed Alex from her grip. We left the venue together, a family once more united, not by blood, but by the bonds of love and forgiveness. The road ahead would be challenging, but we faced it together, stronger for the trials we had overcome. The wedding fiasco was not just the end of Alex and Jenna's relationship, it was a new beginning for us all, a chance to rebuild and to look forward to a future free from manipulation and deceit. In the aftermath of the wedding that wasn't, our family found itself in a delicate state of rebuilding. Alex, freed from Jenna's manipulative clutches but bearing the weight of his actions, sought redemption in the eyes of those he had wronged. The fallout from Jenna's deception left scars, visible and invisible, that we all worked to heal. Alex's return to the fold was tentative at first. The rift his relationship with Jenna had caused wasn't easily mended, but Daniel and I welcomed him back with open arms, ready to forge a new path together. It was a time of honest conversations, of apologies and acceptance, as we navigated the complexities of our renewed relationships. "I was so lost," Alex admitted one evening, as we sat together in the living room, a space once fraught with tension now filled with tentative hope. "I let her words and actions dictate how I saw everyone, even you, Marianne. I'm so sorry." His apology was heartfelt, and I saw in his eyes the sincerity and the regret. "We all make mistakes, Alex," I responded, my voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside. "What matters is that we learn from them and move forward." Daniel, ever the pillar of strength, added, "We're your family, Alex. Nothing can change that. We stick together through thick and thin." The journey to reconciliation was not without its challenges. There were moments of awkwardness, of revisiting old wounds, but there was also laughter and shared memories, reminders of the bond that had held us together through the years. As Alex worked to rebuild his life, distancing himself from the toxic influences that had led him astray, I found myself at a crossroads. The ordeal with Jenna had drained me, leaving me to question my place in the world, both as an artist and as a stepmother. Yet, it was through this period of reflection that I rediscovered my passion for painting. The studio, once a place of solace, became my sanctuary again, the canvases and paints my companions in healing. My art, which had suffered under the weight of Jenna's machinations, flourished anew, each stroke a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Word of my work began to spread, buoyed by the support of friends and the community that had rallied around us during our time of need. Opportunities arose, unexpected and exhilarating, as galleries and collectors expressed interest in my paintings. Daniel, seeing the light return to my eyes with each new piece I created, encouraged me to pursue my art full-time. "This is your moment, Marianne," he said one day, his eyes brimming with pride. "Your talent, your passion, it deserves to be seen by the world." And so I took a leap of faith. I left my job, dedicating myself to my art, to the stories I wanted to tell through color and form. It was a decision not without its fears and uncertainties, but it was one that felt right, a path forward that was uniquely mine to tread. The months that followed were a whirlwind of creativity and discovery. My paintings, once confined to the walls of our home, found their way into the hearts and homes of others, each piece a fragment of my journey, a celebration of overcoming adversity. Alex, too, found his way, embarking on a new career path that allowed him to use his experiences to help others. His relationship with Daniel and me deepened, the bonds of family strengthened by the trials we had faced together. As I look back on that tumultuous time, I am reminded of the power of forgiveness, of the strength found in unity. Jenna's attempt to tear us apart had, in the end, brought us closer together, a family reborn from the ashes of conflict. Life, like art, is a tapestry of light and shadow, of moments both bitter and sweet. In embracing the full spectrum of our experiences, we find the beauty in resilience, the grace in redemption, and the endless possibilities that await us on new paths. like 3 Google usercontent.com AAFTP5/AEFT5 Jibo 5V7 Jericho KML7 Picoles 96C. The journey from the depths of family turmoil to the light of new beginnings was neither swift nor easy, but it was transformative. As I reflect on the path we traversed, I recognize not an ending, but a continuation. A narrative that extends beyond the confines of conflict and resolution into the boundless realm of growth and opportunity. In the months following our reconciliation and my commitment to art, our home became a testament to change. Where once there were echoes of discord, now resided peace and creativity. Daniel, ever my rock, embarked on his own journey of discovery, finding joy in supporting not just my artistic endeavors, but also in fostering a deeper connection with Alex. Alex's evolution was perhaps the most profound. Freed from Jenna's influence, he blossomed, embracing his true self with a vulnerability and strength that was both inspiring and heartwarming. His endeavors to help others, drawing from his own experiences of manipulation and redemption, filled us with pride. The bond between us, tested by fire, emerged stronger, a phoenix reborn. Our story, marked by the scars of betrayal and the beauty of forgiveness, had resonated beyond our immediate circle, touching the lives of those who had witnessed our struggle. The community, once a battleground of rumors and lies, became a network of support and admiration. The success of my art, once a distant dream, became a reality. Exhibitions, commissions, and accolades followed, each achievement a shared victory for our family. The themes of my work, influenced by our journey, spoke of resilience, hope, and the enduring power of love, resonating with an audience far wider than I had ever imagined. As I stood at the opening of my latest exhibition, surrounded by my family and the vibrant expressions of my soul adorning the walls, I was struck by the profound journey of transformation we had undergone. This was not the end of our story, but a new chapter, rich with potential and promise. Daniel, with his unwavering support, and Alex, with his renewed sense of purpose, were by my side, not just as spectators, but as co-creators of this beautiful tapestry we called life. The trials we faced had not only tested, but ultimately affirmed the strength of our bond, teaching us that the essence of family transcends blood and conflict. Looking ahead, the future was a canvas, vast and unmarked, waiting for us to cast our dreams upon it. With brushes in hand and hearts united, we were ready to paint a masterpiece of our own making, filled with the colors of joy, the textures of growth, and the light of love. This chapter of our lives, marked by pain, redemption, and artistic rebirth, was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the human heart. It was a reminder that out of darkness comes light, and from the shadows we can emerge, not diminished, but emboldened to face the dawn of new beginnings. As the evening drew to a close, I realized that our story, with its twists and turns, its lows and highs, was a beacon for anyone navigating the stormy seas of life. It was a narrative of hope, a declaration that no matter how fierce the tempest, the sun awaits to bathe us in its warmth and light. In the end, our journey was not just about overcoming adversity, but about embracing the beauty of the life that lay before us, rich with possibility and enlivened by love. This was not the end, but a beautiful, ongoing emergence from the shadows into the brilliant light of day.